I don't actually like the theme music very much. I wish I could do something better than that.
Okay. I mean, I can't do anything at all, so to me, that theme music is awesome. So
it was fun to do, though, but it sounds very much like something someone just put together in GarageBand, which it is. So
well, I like that. It's honest.
Yeah, true.
It's not trying to be something else.
I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Louis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things. The first time I watched it, I was trying to set aside the excitement for the fact that this was Doctor Who and I hadn't seen Doctor Who in 8 months or so. Well, 9 months at this point, I guess. And I couldn't do it. I had to watch it successive times in order to feel like that had finally worn off. And even after that feeling had worn off, I still really liked this episode.
I was a pretty big fan of almost everything in the episode. I like how, just for starters, it felt very different, both in terms of it's different from a lot of the Dalek stories we've had over the past while, and also just the whole feel of it is kind of different from Series 6, just as Series 6 kind of felt different from Series 5.
I liked that this was not the Daleks attacking something and the Doctor's got to stop them. The Earth has pretty much always been in peril when it's come to the Daleks in the new series. I know that we've talked about this regarding classic stories, where the classic series seems to do a lot on other alien planets, and the new series not so much. And I liked that this was the Daleks on a Dalek planet, basically. It didn't really involve Earth at all, except that there were humans, sort of humans, in some parts, and I liked that a lot.
Just as the Doctor did, I had the objection, well, wouldn't they just exterminate them? And then, they sort of give response to that, but I feel like that response is kind of like, yeah, I just didn't buy the response all that much. I felt like, we revere their hatred and choose to not exterminate them for that. That didn't make much sense to me based on everything we've ever seen Daleks do in the past.
True.
But I was kind of okay with it because even though it was a little bit nonsensical, it was still a really cool idea, and I could still tell from the beginning this has a lot of potential to be interesting. Another way I didn't think it made very much sense is the Time War, which seemed previously to have wiped out all Daleks from existence, and there couldn't possibly be any more. But there was this entire planet full of insane Daleks that presumably the Doctor didn't know about, but presumably the Daleks did, and they never tried to take advantage of it or anything like that.
It's quite possible that they had plans to possibly take advantage of it, but then they just were too scared, like they were to go in to turn off the force field. They're just too scared.
Yeah, okay, that's reasonable. That makes some amount of sense.
I'm just making stuff up as I go, but what was with Skaro? Because I thought Skaro was time locked.
Skaro was destroyed in remembrance of the Daleks.
Oh,
the 7th Doctor Dalek story. I'm pretty sure that one's remembrance. I will never get all the R Dalek stories named straight.
So basically, the Doctor just traveled to a point where Skaro still existed.
I think it's more like they have no interest in explaining how there could possibly still be a Skaro. I don't know. I mean, things like this, like, Skaro exists and there's no attempt to explain it. This planet of Daleks existed all throughout the Time War and beyond, and there was no attempt to explain it. These were things that just immediately popped up in my brain and then went right back down because I was like, all right, I'm just not going to worry about that. Which I think is often the best way to approach Doctor Who, particularly with regard to Daleks and Dalek continuity.
You're not going to be able to reconcile everything, because there's just so much with the Daleks. Yeah, I'm completely fine with just forgetting about it. This is just something that just struck me as being a little unusual. But no, I'm happy to let it slide, especially if it's just for a cool story.
Because I feel like if they were to spend too much time trying to explain why this is the way it is, why this still exists even though we saw it destroyed, or then you get like Attack of the Cybermen. It's a story from the 1980s that spends a lot of time talking about how you can reconcile the continuity of a few different 1960s Cybermen stories that seem to contradict one another. That seems to be the entire point of that story. That no one wants that.
I certainly don't want it. I'm not sure I like the new opening credits.
Well, you won't have to see them again.
Okay.
Because they're doing a different opening credits every week.
Really?
Well, that's what they indicate. I don't know how much the variance is going to be, but they might... I think the colors were a little bit different in the time tunnel effect, and also the font was different.
Yeah.
Like, there were Dalek bumps on the word Doctor Who.
Ah.
I think that's what that was supposed to be.
Okay, I didn't know what that was supposed to be, but that makes sense now.
A little hard to tell even in high definition. Yeah, so I think that's part of the whole, Stephen Moffat saying each episode is going to be like its own movie. So they're giving each one its own opening titles.
That's adorable.
But I imagine that, the font and the typeface that was used for, Matt Smith, Karen Gillan, and Arthur Darvill, that's probably going to stick around because that didn't seem themed.
Right.
It was just white text. What was it that you were objecting to?
I guess just the oversaturated colors and stuff like that. I actually didn't mind the font. It just seemed weird to me that it was the exact same title sequence except for just the colors being a bit off and the font being different.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is because they're going to do a different one every week.
Okay, then you know what? I'm going to retract my objection.
Okay, well, you never know. Maybe after another couple of weeks, you'll be able to bring that objection back out again in a more informed capacity.
There you go. Well, then, I'll hang on to that.
Yeah. One of the big things about this story that was sort of a selling point when Moffat was sort of, building the hype around this series of Doctor Who was that this is a story that was going to have every Dalek ever.
Right.
I believe that they're all in this episode, but it's a little hard to tell.
Right.
Because, everything's really dimly lit. They're all, covered in dust and rubble and whatnot. So, I believe that all of the 60s, 70s, and 80s Daleks are there, as well as the Russell T. Davies' personal Dalek that he had specially commissioned for his home.
Wait, I didn't know about this.
Russell T. Davies had a personal, specially commissioned Dalek. I'm actually not sure whether it was during the time he was executive producer on Doctor Who or before, back when he was just a fan with money to burn, I guess. But he had his own Dalek made, and they decided to canonize it by borrowing it from him and putting it in this episode. But, I wouldn't know where to look for it.
Yeah, actually, I guess I wasn't looking that closely, but I didn't see any of the 60s and so on Daleks. I guess I wasn't really looking that hard.
It was kind of hard to tell. I assume that everything that was in the Dalek Parliament was the old, bronze Daleks.
Right.
And the quote-unquote new paradigm Daleks that were introduced in Victory of the Daleks that seem to have taken a back seat.
Right.
I find that kind of funny how the entire point of that episode was presenting, the old Daleks are completely inferior, and this is the new Dalek paradigm going forward. But they've just completely backpedaled on it so much.
I like the new paradigm Daleks. I like them possibly a little bit more than the bronze Daleks.
I just don't like the shape.
Really?
I don't like the hunchback. Or the big butt, or whatever you call it. I don't know. I mean...
See, I think that makes them a little bit more menacing, and I don't know why.
Really? That makes them more menacing?
Yes.
Okay.
Well. I don't know. They seem... You know what? I don't know. It's
there are things I do like. I really like the eye stalk. And how when you get up close, there's what looks like a biological eye in there.
Yes.
I really do like that. I don't know that I like the candy colors that much. But
yeah, I'm not wild about that, but the shape is something I can get behind.
I feel like the 1960s and 70s Daleks, maybe they just don't look very good. So they're in there, but they're kind of not very visible or have been treated in such a way that they look dilapidated. I assume, how at the end he goes into what Oswin refers to as intensive care? where he meets Daleks from, and she lists a bunch of planets that refer to Dalek stories from the classic series. So I imagine those Dalek models in that room might have been the old ones, but I just can't tell the difference.
Ah, I see. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that.
I think that makes us bad fans.
I guess it does.
Because a true fan would probably know exactly, which story each one appeared in and which Dalek operator was piloting it.
We are terrible fans.
Yeah.
So, Oswin.
That's the big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the new companion. That's the actress.
Well, Oswin is certainly played by Jenna Louise Coleman.
Right.
And Jenna Louise Coleman is certainly playing the new companion, who we had been told would be appearing in the Christmas special for the first time. And something kind of interesting about that is it's entirely reasonable to think that someone watching this wouldn't know that.
Right, I am almost certain that my parents who watched it last night did not know that, and
Right.
I haven't told them.
I also watched it with someone who didn't know that, and there's nothing in the episode to sort of indicate that there's anything unresolved about that character or anything, signposting a kind of mysterious thing we should watch out for. So the fact that that's strange and unusual is completely down to fans knowing about something that's completely external to the show.
Right. Yeah. So that's weird.
And in fact, I think that not knowing that, actually, the episode ends with kind of like an M. Night Shyamalan twist, where it turns out she's actually a Dalek.
Right.
And I didn't see that coming.
I
Did
didn't see
you?
it coming either.
But the person I was watching it with did.
Really?
And I think the reason is because I was distracted by the knowledge that this is Jenna Louise Coleman, the new companion.
So maybe that was Stephen Moffat's plan all along, is to make us think that this could not possibly be a Dalek, so that it doesn't even enter in our minds that it is a Dalek.
It did cross my mind that she might be like a Dalek puppet, because, the Dalek puppets don't always know that they're Dalek puppets. But,
right.
The notion that she's actually just a Dalek who used to be a person didn't occur to me.
So,
but obviously this raises a pretty big question.
right.
Which is... Actually, it doesn't raise a question so much as a non-specific... what? What? What's going on? That kind of thing.
Yes. Well, because I guess there... I guess this wouldn't be the first time that an actor or actress has appeared in Doctor Who, only to later play a different character as the companion.
Or even the Doctor, that's happened.
True.
Because, Colin Baker played a different Time Lord first. But yeah, you had Freema Agyeman playing a minor character in the finale of Series 2, only to pop up at the beginning of Series 3 as a different character who is the identical cousin. And then you have, the soothsayer in Fires of Pompeii turns out to be Amy. Well, no, that's not true. That's actually not true. It doesn't turn out to be Amy. You know what I mean.
Yes.
It's possible that this is just a case of this character, they liked her and then decided, we're going to reuse that actress after filming this episode. But I don't think that's what happened. Mm-hmm. Because these episodes, she was announced as the new companion a very long time ago.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it is probably the first time that an actor or actress has been used as a different character, presuming this is in fact a different character, knowing that they're going to later come back as a regular.
Right. I would be interested to know if this is going to be a situation where it's like, this is her identical twin or something like that.
The thing about that is it would never be addressed on screen because the Doctor doesn't know what she looks like. So the Doctor would run into her and he's never seen Oswin.
Right.
Except, Dalek Oswin.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe he meets her at some point earlier in her time stream.
That might make sense.
Like a river song kind of thing, which I think that would be kind of lame if they did that again.
Yeah, I'm kind of over that.
It could just be that they have no intention of ever addressing it and just say, just for fun, we thought, she's a good actress. We need someone to play this character. And also, I wonder, it's entirely possible that these scenes would have been filmed separately, the ones involving her, because she's never on screen with another character. Mm-hmm. So it could be that they made this episode not knowing who was gonna play this character, and then later just filmed and inserted all those scenes. I don't know. And they haven't really said very much about it. Like, Stephen Moffat posted a little message on the Doctor Who website. I don't know if you saw that, but it was basically just thanking the press and the fans who had come to the screening for not spoiling the surprise of her appearance, and, you know, lavishing praise upon her, which I think was largely deserved, because I thought she did a really good job. But no word of like a hint of what's to come, or what kind of questions we might keep in mind, or anything.
Maybe she's in every episode.
That occurred to me. It would be kind of interesting. The next episode certainly doesn't seem to include her in the trailer, but then again, neither did this one.
Right. Maybe this is like a new species of... well, she says she's human, but I don't know if I believe that. Maybe she's like some sort of reverse Time Lord, where instead of like when she dies, she regenerates into someone else, it's when she dies, someone regenerates into her.
That's probably it. There's one theory I've actually heard that I'm surprised you haven't said yet.
Okay.
Can you guess what it is?
That she's the Doctor?
No.
Okay, then no.
That she's Jenny.
Oh.
That's something that was a piece of speculation that I had heard. I feel like every time something kind of strange and unexplained happens, that theory is going to pop up. But,
you know, I'm surprised I hadn't thought of that as well. But yeah, no, actually, I could get behind that.
Because, I mean, she wouldn't recognize the Doctor.
Right. I like that theory.
I knew you would. That would consequently, of course, mean that she's the voice in the TARDIS at the end of Series 5.
Well, of course.
Says, "Silence will fall," as previously established in the canon of this podcast. Were you immediately aware that she was Jenna Louise Coleman?
I heavily suspected it. Well, I was initially confused because that seemed to not at all be... Once again, I'd heard that she was going to first appear in the Christmas special, so I immediately dismissed it as, this couldn't possibly be her, even though it looked very much like her.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough of her. I've never seen her in anything. I've only ever seen still images of her, maybe like a 30-second interview clip or something. So I was like, that looks like Jenna Louise Coleman. Is that who that is? That's how I was at first. But.
Right, yeah, I didn't really... I suspected it was, but I couldn't say for sure, and I didn't want to embarrass myself by being like, yeah, that's definitely her.
For whom were you worried about, like, embarrassing yourself in front of?
Just myself.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I was just really confused.
Yeah, I was and still am, but I've decided to think of her as though she's just her own character who appears in this one episode, and, you know, we'll see.
There you go.
But it would be neat if she was in every episode.
I could get behind that.
Playing a different character.
Yeah.
And then we meet the companion, and it's another different character, and none of them are related in any way. It's just a brute fact of this series that just happens to be true.
Maybe, like, she is the perfect genetic being or something, and so, like, a bunch of different separate organisms have all tried to converge on this one genetic pattern, and so that's why they all look like her.
That's also why every species in the Doctor Who universe looks vaguely human, to varying extents, because they're all trying to get as close to her in particular.
Or maybe it's like in Pokemon, where, like, all the different cities have, like, a Nurse Joy.
It's probably like in Pokemon. It's probably just like Pokemon. She may be a Pokemon. We only ever see her inside of... Maybe she's the Dalek is the Pokeball, and she's actually a real human who's just living inside of a Dalek-shaped Pokeball.
Of course.
A human Pokemon. You know, like a Mr. Mime kind of thing, or, you know, like a vaguely human-looking Pokemon that lives inside of a Pokeball.
There you go.
This episode also featured the triumphant return of a villain introduced in Series 1. Not a villain, really. The Nanogenes.
Was that in Series 1?
Yeah, the Empty Child / the Dr. Dances.
Oh, I thought they were called something different.
Well, this called them, like, the Nano Cloud.
Yeah.
And the Doctor briefly mentioned something like, it's made up of nanogenes or something. He said something like that. And the nanogenes are what they called the things, the nanobot thingies in The Empty Child.
Oh, I got ya.
And they sort of work the same way.
Yeah.
They rewrite your whole situation.
your whole situation. Yes, like your living situation.
They put you in a different tax bracket. they just do everything. They just change it all up.
But yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, I actually really liked the corpse zombie Dalek things that only appeared for like a couple minutes, but I thought those were really neat and really creepy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Stephen Moffat is doing a great job scaring children.
Yeah.
And adults.
Yeah. It was already kind of creepy, like, in the beginning with, you first see these people with, Dalek eye stalks and whisks coming out of their hands. That was already creepy enough, but then in the end, like, halfway through the episode, they did it with corpses, so that was even more gruesome and stuff.
Indeed. Has the Doctor ever been described as the Predator before?
No, not that I'm aware of. I think that's a new one.
I'm not sure how much I like it.
The Predator?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like I don't know. There's like this other science fiction franchise that kind of evokes. I'm sure it'll come to me. Recently, they've had kind of a second lease on life going up against these aliens. It's on the tip of my tongue. No, I've actually never seen those movies.
Oh, really?
No, I haven't.
Have you not seen the Alien vs. Predator movies, or have you not seen Aliens or Predator, or Predators, or Predator 2?
I've seen no Aliens, no Predators, and no Aliens versus Predators.
So no combination thereof.
Yeah, I haven't even seen the one that's a prequel to the Aliens. That one. You know that one? The one that just came out this year?
Actually, no. I don't know that one.
Oh, it was called, it was Damon Lindelof.
Oh.
It was, Prometheus. That's what I'm talking about. Prometheus.
Oh, I didn't realize that was an actual prequel.
Yeah, well, I don't know how much it ties in because I haven't seen the Alien movies or Prometheus, so I can't really judge whether it's sufficiently close to be called a prequel.
Well,
according to your standards, which are unknown to me.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just really liked The Oncoming Storm as a title for the Doctor, and, The Predator felt like kind of a down step.
Yeah, well, The Oncoming Storm is mentioned.
Yes.
In this episode.
Right. I suppose it would be difficult for the Daleks to... Well, I mean, I feel like the Predator is easier for a Dalek to say. Maybe...
How often have we actually heard Daleks saying Oncoming Storm?
I don't think we've ever heard it.
Yeah, I don't remember it happening. It might have happened in Series 1. I don't really remember. The Dalek Emperor might have said it or something, but...
Maybe the Doctor just calls himself that.
Well, yeah, he claims the Daleks call him that, but now that you realize it, I can't even think about a Dalek saying it.
I mean,
it
is a pretty badass name, so maybe he just thought he could pull that off.
Yeah, Predator does sound like more phonetically...
Yeah.
Dalek.
And I guess I thought it was weird at first that the Doctor wasn't even aware that this is what they called him.
Well, the Dalek society has, completely rebuilt itself, I guess.
Well, okay, true. This is their new meme.
I guess this is their new meme because, Daleks keep getting wiped out and then brought back into existence and wiped out and brought back into existence. And I guess, this new Dalek, I mean, Daleks haven't previously had a parliament and a prime minister, but this new sort of Dalek organization is not the one we saw in, say, Doomsday, because all those were destroyed.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So these guys have got their own, buzzwords and corporate doublespeak.
Yes.
Well, it's a moot point by the end of the episode anyway.
Right.
And that's actually really cool. The Daleks no longer have any idea who the Doctor is. Presumably all Daleks.
Right. Does that mean that the Daleks don't remember all their previous failures? Because, the Doctor has thwarted them at almost every turn. Or at least every turn that we see. So does that mean they don't remember losing all those battles and all those failed plots? Or do they just remember them, but they don't remember who thwarted them?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's probably not something they're ever going to go into too much detail about, though. Also, presumably, if Davros is alive somewhere out there and ever comes back, I wonder if he will remember the Doctor, and I would like to hope that he would.
It would be a little disappointing to erase that, because that's kind of a big sort of, I don't want to call it a rivalry, but it's like a sort of nemesis situation type thingy.
That wouldn't be very prudent to erase, because that's so cool. That when they want to bring him back, they want to be this big thing. As you may be aware, I've been rewatching Doctor Who from the beginning at some very slow rate. I've currently finished season 3, so I'm almost to the end of the first Doctor era. But in the in the very first Dalek story, obviously the Doctor and the Daleks have no idea who each other are. And then in the second Dalek story, the Dalek invasion of Earth, that's at an earlier point in the Dalek timeline. So the Doctor knows who they are, but they don't know who he is. But every single subsequent story features the Daleks considering the Doctor as a known nemesis of the Daleks. I mean, when I say every single story, that's obviously not entirely true because, genesis of the Daleks.
Right.
But the status quo ever since the Season 2 story called The Chase, ever since then, the Daleks' status quo has been hating on the Doctor. And presumably they still hate on him because they hate on everything that isn't a Dalek.
Right.
And some Daleks as well. But yeah, they no longer. That's kind of an interesting development, I think.
It almost seems like it's Stephen Moffat's mission to sort of really alter what had been set up in I guess by all previous seasons of Doctor Who. He's kind of taken the Doctor sort of back into the shadows where he's not as famous of a figure. Well, he's still a famous figure, but everyone thinks he's dead.
Right.
And that was actually mentioned at the start of this episode, is they thought that he died.
Yeah, and one of the things was I thought that was such an interesting idea at the very end of the last series. The Doctor saying, "Well, I'm gonna fake my death and use that as a way to live in the shadows." But I kind of had this worry that Moffat wasn't really all that interested in following up on, and it was just a justification for the death scene. He just needed a way to write himself out of that, so he just wrote this, throwaway thing about, I'm going to go back to the shadows, which he would then feel free to ignore. But I guess that worry was kind of unfounded because he hammers it home even further in Asylum of the Daleks.
Yeah, and I thought that was cool. Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting to see if that has any more effect anywhere else in this in the rest of this series.
One would hope so.
I like to believe that it will.
Amy and Rory,
right,
and their impending divorce was something that I had actually had that kind of spoiled for me.
Oh, really?
I had seen a photo from filming by accident, a photo of Rory storming out of their home, which is not something that was in this episode. It was actually in the Pond Life web series, which I assume you saw?
I actually did not see that.
Oh, well, you should.
Well, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of inconsequential, really, but it's 5 episodes, each one's about a minute long, and it's just, the first 4 are kind of like almost sitcom style. Amy and Rory are trying to live their life, but they've got this crazy guy called the Doctor who keeps on popping in and causing all kinds of havoc. And that's sort of the premise. But then in the final one, the Doctor sort of goes there and they're not home and then leaves them a message. And then you sort of see these scenes of this, they're clearly distraught and Amy's yelling and then Rory's storming out and Amy's crying. And you're like, oh, things aren't so good for the Ponds.
Aha.
So yeah, that's just about what there is that's relevant. But anyhow, what I ended up actually saw was a photo from one of those scenes, I guess. But I thought that it was a little bit silly.
Yeah, I would say that as well. I think, if anything, it sort of detracted from this episode. I
think it kind of did. And the more I thought of it, I guess it's sort of a little bit justified, because the problem I had with it, this is kind of a big problem, it's like, if they had talked about it for even just 30 seconds, she would be like, well, I just found out that I can't have kids. And she assumes that this is because of something that happened to her at Demon's Run in A Good Man Goes to War. I don't know how she knows that.
Right.
Maybe it was explained to her while she was there. I don't know. And so, I mean, he could say, oh, well, you know what, that's kind of disappointing, but I guess that's okay with it. We could probably just adopt. If they had just, had that conversation.
Right.
And throughout the entire episode, she's like, it's just life. Things happen. The real world is complicated, Doctor, and you don't understand that. But it's really just this dumb thing. But the thing is, it's also true that up until Amy's choice in Series 5, she had never told Rory that she loved him.
Yeah.
Even though they were already engaged. So these are just two people who are phenomenally bad at communicating with one another.
Right. It's kind of surprising that they've stayed together as long as they have.
Yeah. I feel like almost anything could tear them apart in a traumatic and deeply emotional situation.
Yes.
Because it was so easy to turn them both into, like, bitter, jaded people.
Yes.
And that's why they need the Doctor.
Yes, clearly. The Doctor really needs to solve all of their marital problems.
And he didn't even really do anything. He just, left them alone to talk about it.
Right, he put them in a room together.
And it sorted itself out.
It did. In fact, maybe that's just how they have always dealt with problems. They just sat in a room together, and one of them finally decided to say something.
Well, I think it's important that they be put in life-threatening danger.
Oh, yeah, right. That's an important premise.
Because, I don't know, they just seem to have problems unless they're put in life-threatening danger.
There you go.
Like Amy, decide, you know what, never mind Rory, I'm going to jump on the Doctor and make out with him. And then the Doctor's like, all right, I know how to fix this. And so he picks up Rory and takes them into life-threatening danger, and all is solved.
There you go. That's all they need. I wonder if that would work for, like, all married couples.
Presumably.
Yeah, Amy and Rory are kind of like the surrogate for every married couple ever.
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like the lost theory of couples counseling. It's like all of these people are like completely broken and they have all these things wrong with their life. Tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna put them all on this island with polar bears and crazy people and lots of bad stuff and rain.
Yes, rain.
And then it'll all turn out all right for some of them.
There you go.
Most of them will die.
Yeah.
But another thing that's very interesting is the fact that he takes them home.
Yes, he does. I guess this is really living up to its name that you don't need to watch. There's no continuity really that you need because the Doctor picks them up. Well, actually, the Daleks pick them up, put them together. Then at the end of the episode, they're back to normal again.
And it's actually kind of interesting because Amy and Rory are the only companions in the entire history of the series that the Doctor does that with.
Huh.
In the classic series, you sort of start traveling with the Doctor, and then at one point you're done, and he leaves you somewhere, usually of your own volition, but not always. And it's often in a different place from like the time your own era. And then there's no expectation that you're ever going to see him again. In the Russell T Davies era, you had companions who would turn up again, but this is the first time there was ever companions that he drops them off, they go on with their lives, and then he pops in, and then they travel with him or just go on one adventure or whatever, and then he drops them off again and then goes off and does his own thing, and then he comes back. There's never been anything like that.
Huh. That's interesting. That's kind of weird from just a storytelling standpoint because it sort of complicates things. Because you never really know when they're actually... Well, I guess it always leaves the door open for them to come back.
Exactly.
So I'm guessing that when they finally go away for realsies, it's going to be more dramatic.
Yeah, it'll almost have to be. Like, for instance, one of the things is they made this big announcement that... I think we've already talked about this on this podcast at some point in the distant past. I don't remember when, but they made this big announcement that, the Ponds would be leaving halfway through this season, which was kind of interesting because they had already left in the God Complex.
Right.
Pretty definitively. But then again, between A Christmas Carol and The Impossible Astronaut, they leave the Doctor, and the show doesn't even bother to take an interest in how that happened or why or under what circumstances.
True.
That does create the sort of... Okay, well, how do we know when we're done with these characters?
Right.
I think the same is true of River, too.
Yeah, because I guess I kind of assumed that we were done with River when, I guess, the whole marriage thing happened. I don't know why I assumed that, but it seemed like that was kind of the whole arc. But, I don't know if she's in this next episode. No.
No, she's not.
I've seen some of the trailers. I don't know which one's for what. But I know that she makes some sort of appearance.
Do you want me to tell you, or is it a spoiler?
You know what? Go ahead and spoil me.
She's in the 5th episode.
Okay.
Which is the final one of this little run. I don't know of her being in any other episodes.
Yeah, that's kind of a character that could always... just her very basic premise is that she just is out of sync with the Doctor, so she could pop up at any point. So,
Have you seen the Night and the Doctor things on the DVD or Blu-ray of Series 6?
The what?
You're just not up on all these mini episodes, Lewis.
I'm really not.
There's like a series of mini episodes called Night and the Doctor, and one of them is called like First Night, and one of them is called Last Night. a couple of them involve multiple versions of the Doctor and multiple versions of River sort of popping in and out in this, like, farcical style. But something that's actually kind of important as a plot thing that I was surprised to see they would relegate to a DVD extra occurs in that.
Really?
So, yeah, you should definitely watch those. But those are set, from the Doctor's perspective, those are set after the Wedding of River song.
Interesting.
Yeah. Asylum of the Daleks is my favorite Dalek story since Dalek.
Yeah, I think that I would agree. Yes. I hadn't really thought of ranking them, but yeah.
I like the Daleks, but I find that I don't actually like the Dalek stories all that much all the time. Like, I think the fact that the Daleks are going to be in Doctor Who isn't something that always makes me excited.
Right.
Because, I mean, they're often kind of, played out, but this was definitely a really fresh version of them.
Right. Well, and I think, I mean, I think that there's only so much you can do with the Daleks. I mean, they're, interesting mostly because they're, like, a huge threat to anything ever. But there's only so much you can do while keeping that still, original and interesting. Like, oh no, the Earth is in peril because the Daleks are coming. That's something that's not always going to be a fun thing. I don't know. I mean, I know that they're, like, iconic, and so you always need to have the Daleks every now and again, but yeah, I would say that, like, finding out that the Daleks are going to be in an episode doesn't really excite me like I guess it did when I was first starting to watch Doctor Who. But no, this was definitely a new sort of idea.
And it was also interesting to see Moffat take on, classic monsters, which he doesn't really do very often.
True.
I'd like to see a Stephen Moffat Cybermen story, because we haven't really properly gotten a Cybermen story in a while. I mean, I don't really count Closing Time because I feel like the Cybermen were so incidental to that. It was more just like Matt Smith and James Corden buddy comedy stuff.
Right.
But yeah, like a real proper Cybermen story would be fun.
Yeah, it would.
And I want to see it.
I would want to see it too.
Show it to me, Moffat.